Welcome, those of you who jumped on. Thanks for coming. Hopefully, you're here because you're excited to learn about some nutrition and the impacts it could have on our soccer performance, and because you were asked to and forced to by your coaches. So, welcome. We have Axel, who has been nice enough to join us here today and next Tuesday to discuss the importance of nutrition, sports nutrition, which is a topic that's really piqued my interest since I was a young player. I remember myself at a U13 tournament with South Central PDA tournament down in New Jersey. Played for a pretty good team, and first game of the tournament, we played well, 1-2-0. A bunch of the guys went to the hot dog truck, got some burgers and dogs, and drank soda between games. And we got smoked in the second game in the afternoon. And the coach really preached about nutrition since that point. And then, when I went to Monmouth University, first day of meetings, they dropped a nutrition notebook in front of us. And then same thing when I went to the MLS Combine, there was a seminar just specifically on nutrition where, once again, they gave us a packet on nutrition, discussing the importance, because if you want to play at a high level, it's about taking care of your body and putting yourself in the best position to succeed. So Axel's going to break down a lot of different things, whether it's preparation for games, recovery, a lot of really important stuff that many players and all players, not all players, but a good amount of players that I've coached really aren't fully aware of. And it's something that could drastically change your performance on the field. So hopefully this is beneficial to everybody. I know it's going to be a lot of information, so we broke it up into two parts. Try not to take up too much of your time and Axel's time, who's kind enough to join us. So I'll let Axel introduce himself. I'll jump in and if he needs anything. But I'm assuming we'll also open up to questions, ask Axel, or I could have people send questions to me prior to next week, our second part, whatever you want. So Axel, introduce yourself, take it away. And once again, thank you, man. We're happy to have you.
Well, good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Axel Mahlke. You probably already detected my dialect. I'm from Germany. I'm a Hamburger from North Germany, city of Hamburg. The first out of college, I kind of graduated from medical school. I worked 4 years in orthopedic surgery, replaced hips and knees, partially on professional soccer players. Switched careers, became a kinesiologist. I work now in orthopedic health and fitness. I also, obviously, now I'm a certified nutritionist. Work on that. I also am a coach for CT Rush. I teach the little ones, the boys here in the Southeast, 2011, 2012. And I've coached for 15 years now. And over the 15 years, I have learned a lot as a coach, as a dad, and from my youth as a player about nutrition and soccer. Now, my brother is also a doctor. He is a team doctor for a Bundesliga team in Germany for Paderborn. Actually, now second Bundesliga, they got relegated. So maybe their advice is not so good. But I also am in contact regularly with some of the top nutritionists in that league. And that carries a lot of weight, because these guys have only one goal, and that is to get peak performance from every player to turn games in their favor. And when you make millions of euros as a salary, you have to perform. So under eating, overeating, wrong eating is literally undermining their careers and their livelihood. So what we're going to do is today I'm going to talk about generally a little bit identifying where your energy comes from, and that you understand the concept of this. And that is, of course, soccer specific. So the advice I give today is not necessarily suitable for your parents who might be in weight loss goals, or for people with medical condition who need maybe a specific advice on their condition on this one. So this is good for the general youth athlete. So the guidelines I'm working with they're consistent with the guidelines from US Youth Soccer. This is your governing soccer national body organization. And so this is consistent. You may even read that up on there if you feel this was all too much or you couldn't retain all the information. So let's dig into it. I give about a 15-minute, 20-minute run through on this. It's pretty easy to understand. I try to avoid fancy language. I learned that early on in my medical career, that when you use Greek and Latin words, that you get just a lot of question marks, and you really didn't transfer the information powerful enough. Afterwards, I open up for questions. Some questions, like most subjects around nutrition, are not easy to answer with little blurbs. So I give a simple answer, but I'm more than welcome to follow up with emails for individual questions for those of you who like to dig into it. So let's get to it, you guys. Eating, your nutrition, what you eat at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, is single-handedly the most underutilized tool for you to become a better athlete. All right, I'll give you an example. We all know we need to hydrate, right? So most of our body, 70% of our body is made of water. If you just dehydrate by as little as 1 to 2%, your performance is already diminished by up to 10 to 20%. It means you run 10 to 20% less fast, less long, and obviously less skilled. Right? 2% dehydration is not a lot. You can do the math, take your body weight, that's 75%, take that number, and find 1% of that, and you find out that's only really like a very few, it's like a half a liter, and already you're dehydrated. So you can see that everything you put in your mouth has majorly to do with how you perform on the field. And when you look at games, often in older age groups, they're often decided in the second half. The reason why they are decided in the second half is because people get physically on their muscular system and mentally on their nervous system, on your brain, tired. And you make more mistakes. We all have been there. I am, as a coach, see that all the time. And so if you can eat properly most of the time during the week, and particularly next week we talk about your pre-game eating habits. If you can do all that properly, you have an edge which is actually more significant than just being able to run 30 yards a second faster than your competitor. Because if he can only do that in the first half and then fades, you have an edge. So guys, your nutrition is absolutely positively the single easiest thing you can improve. Now let's dig into it. It's very simple. Nature provides us 3 basic groups where we get calories from, right? They call them carbohydrates. That's often known as starches and sugars, right? You get that from vegetables are carbohydrates. Starches like in form of bread and rice and pasta, right? That's starches, that's more complex carbohydrates. And then, obviously, we know all the simple sugars, the ice cream, the chocolate, and stuff like that. That also is carbohydrates. All right. That actually, I mentioned that first because that is the carbohydrates, not the ice cream and the sugar, but generally the group of carbohydrates is what you as an athlete utilize almost exclusively during a game, right? So carbohydrate management is going to be for you the key to be faster, stronger, and more successful. All right, so keep that in mind. Carbs. So then we have fat, right? Everybody knows fat. It comes in form of oils and butter and all kinds of, like often fish oil when you eat animal meat like steaks and pork. There's fat in that and so on. So fat comes in different forms and shapes. And you need some of it, but in regards of your performance on the field, fat is not much of a contributor. Okay, and then the third group is proteins. You have all heard of that. Protein is basically made out of a lot of little blocks called amino acids. That's often the animal proteins in form of meats, right? We have chicken and turkey and poultry, which is like often leaner. And then we have red meats, which are not so lean. They're heavier. They sit in your stomach a little heavy, like in form of beef and pork and stuff like that. But we also have protein coming from vegetables, right? Like all vegetables, which are dark and green, often, and legumes, beans and stuff, they have lots of protein in that as well. So you don't need to always worry about eating lots of chicken or steak or have whey protein shakes, things like that. You also need to hit the veggies hard. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So in each and one of those groups, you have better and worse choices. Right. So I think when I ask my clients, I consult when what they think is a good and bad nutrition. I ask them, write down what you think you're doing wrong. And you know what they all write down? They say, I eat a big dinner. I like the fast foods. Adults often say, I like my glass of wine or the desserts. I'm a meat and potato kind of guy. So they all know that somehow that's not right? So we all know mostly what we're struggling with. The problem is, why can't we change, right? So your motivation to change is just equally as important as your knowledge about what to do about the change. So think about that a little bit when you look at your next meal after today, how that meal compares to a little bit the guidelines I gave you. All right. So if you look at a plate and make that a circle, like a meal plate you have. So for an athlete, we like generally a little bit more, half of that plate should be filled with carbohydrates. Right? We like, for example, the pasta now and the breads and the rice. There's a good choice in them. It's called whole wheat pasta and whole wheat bread and then brown rice. And what it means is they haven't been as processed. It hasn't been as whitewashed and chemically manipulated. So they're like a little bit more, let's say, nutrient dense. They give us more energy than the white versions of it. So they're better. But generally, both of them will work for the athlete. Okay, so remember that when you look at your plate the next time for dinner, right? Put it a little bit in groups, right? Your meat over here, your veggies over there, and the starches and then over there, and see a little bit how that compares, right? If you're not at least having half of your plate from these carbohydrates, then you will struggle if you're an athlete in training. Now, there's a little bit of thought you have to think about. Right now, we're in COVID. Most of you are not as active as when you're training 2 to 3 times a week. So during this time, keep that a little bit on the lower side, maybe less than half of the plate of it. But once you start training 2-3 times a week and you have your games going on, you will need these plates filled, half of it at least, and slightly more. So let's say 50 to 60% of your calories of main meals coming from those carbohydrates. And then the other half of the plate, you split in half from the protein and the other half from the veggies. Okay, so the salad, the vegetables, the greens, all those kind of things. So that is how you easily right now can identify, what if you do things right or wrong. So for example, I have 2 sons. One, they're both in Rush. One is the 06 goalkeeper on the elite team, and the other one just graduated and is in college. And I started with them at age 12. And I see here on the pictures that some of you are in that age group, and some are older and some are younger. But we kind of literally took pictures of our meals, and then we kind of compared them. And my sons, when they got 100% score, on fulfilling the requirements, man, they had a sweet potato filled out half the plate and broccoli and then lean chicken. It was a celebration in my house. All right. And they felt the difference. At that age group, I noticed also, just like Coach Ryan, I went to a tournament and we had a Saturday morning game like most tournaments. And afterwards is that lunch break and people went to the snack bar. It was at 4 Kicks in Massachusetts. Maybe some of you have been there. And they have a snack bar. Everyone went to the snack bar. And you know what they sell at the snack bar? They sell pizza and they sell hot dogs and all these kind of things. So these are comfort foods. They are not ideal for the athlete because they're very high in fats. That's where I want to go next. These fats sit in your stomach. They take a long time for your body to digest. And when your body is in digestion mode, it uses blood more in that area of your body than in your brain and in your muscles. Meaning when you eat comfort food, most food franchises like McDonald's and Burger King and Five Guys and all these things, those are high in fat. And so it means afterwards your body goes and shifts a lot of blood into your stomach and intestines. And then you go on the field and you're just like a rock. And so we were favored in that second game and we got creamed. And all the player came and looked at me like, what did we do? Why didn't it work? And I asked them, what did you have for lunch? And the answers was burgers and hot dogs and pizzas. And we switched that, and that very same team I brought like 5 years later, the State Cup Championship here in East Lyme, because they always ate properly. So we kind of talked about the fat. So good fats, probably most of you know, the good olive oils, the seafood has good fat, and sometimes even avocados and other vegetables have a lot of good fat in it. Bad fats is everything which is in baking goods and things like that, like fast food particularly. And the last choice, again, I talked about the protein. You need to have good protein on your plate. So turkey, chicken, and vegetable proteins are best for athletes. But, you can have steaks and pork as well. They just take longer to digest. So they're not very conducive to do before games or before practices. It takes often like 2 to 3 days to digest a big steak. All right. And often, you obviously want to be able to play, soccer in the meantime. And with a big chunk of meat in your stomach, that again will be making you slow. So now I want to explain a little bit how your body works when you exercise. So now let's say you have eaten well your body is basically like a battery. It stores energy. Everybody has, when you look at yourself, you can see where your body stores energy. All right. Sugar is stored in your muscle and in your liver mostly. All right. So in your muscle and your liver, it's called glycogen. And that's a very important word you want to learn. But it's basically stored sugar. It's called glycogen. All right. And it's the main form of energy your body uses because it has in the muscle up to 40 to 60 minutes of energy stored. That's the energy you need to have filled. So you have probably heard of carb loading, right? Endurance athletes do that. I was a triathlete for a bunch of years. We did 2 to 3 days of carb loading before a big race, like a half Ironman or an Olympic triathlon, just to make sure that that carb battery is really all the way filled. Next week, when you come to that seminar, guys, I will give a very specific guideline to the detail, very simple, how you can carb load before a game and tournament. And I tell you what, you guys, it will make a huge difference. Trust me on that. So anyway, so this is the first energy, right? So your body burns these carbs. When the game goes really long, like the big guys, 80, 90-minute long, you struggle, right? So it's very important that you have obviously now some form of intake of calories. That's where the Gatorades and things like that come in. That's where the energy, not the energy drinks, but the sugary Gatorade and Powerade drinks are really pretty good. Some professional athletes like Russell Wilson even likes, what is it, like the little, what's the, I forgot that, M&Ms or something like that. He likes those. Some people eat chocolate, gummy bears. I think Greg's or two boys ate gummy bears at halftime. So those are all simple sugars. And I want to explain what it means, simple and carbohydrate and complex sugar. So your sugars in your body, they work like making a fire. Many of you have a fireplace at home or have seen a bonfire outside. Now, think about this. Let's say your dad comes and takes a couple of big logs and puts them in the fireplace and he puts a match against it and tries to light the fire. That's not going to work, right? Because the logs are not going to burn immediately. They are big chunks of wood and a match doesn't do anything. You can't start a fire by holding a match against a big log. So what do? You take kindling, smaller pieces of wood and piece of paper underneath. And that burns first and burns, and you know, it starts in the process of igniting the bigger logs. That's exactly how our body works. So we have the simple sugars, right? The gummy bears and the Skittles. That was what Russell was in, the M&Ms and all those kind of things. All right. So that is the stuff which is the kindling. All right. So you need some of that. So for example, my athletes, I consult on a lot of semi-professional and Division I athletes. So I ask them in the morning to eat like oatmeal, but I want them to have some brown sugar and some fruit on that. And that brown sugar and the fruit is the kindling. And the oatmeal is a complex carbohydrate. That's the log. And so you can see the kindling starts the log. So if you don't have both of these in the right ratio, then you're not going to perform well. I'll give you an example. Let's take again your dad, right? Let's think he's smart. Hey, my coach told me to use kindling. Let's say your dad takes a big chunk of just thin branches and kindling, puts in the fireplace and lights it. You know what's going to happen, right? It makes a big flame, poof, and then it's gone. And then you have nothing. And that's exactly what happens if you eat only simple sugars. That's why ice creams and gummy bears and Skittles are not really a good form of nutrition for an athlete, but they can help to jumpstart doing athletic activity. All right. So now you know you can't just have logs and you can't just have kindling, right? So when you look at your pre-game meals, and I will talk about those next week, and you know, even your training day meals, you need to understand, is there kindling and is there logs on your plate? If you don't have those, you will struggle. All right. So the battery basically needs to be charged. If your glycogen, I told you earlier, stored energy in your muscle, in your liver is too low, you will fade, you know, up to, you know, some people fade 30 minutes, 40 minutes, some is 50 minutes. And then your body, and in a moment I open it up to questions, just hang on. And then your body will need to struggle for more energy. And that's when it starts metabolizing the other stored forms of energy. First fat, right, or in form of under the skin, all right, and in between the organs, and then obviously in the end protein. Now I give you an example. endurance athletes, marathon runners, they metabolize a lot of fat and a lot of muscle because they run obviously marathons in 3-4 hours, right? So they need a lot of energy. So yes, they metabolize their own body a little bit, right? Our body cannibalizes their own protein and fat. That's why they look emaciated and skinny. Take a football player who has only like 10-15 seconds worth of explosive energy. He just needs that kindling and train to utilize that energy. And he'll not cannibalize or use his fat and his muscle as an energy form, and he stays bulky and strong and muscular. All right, so a soccer player is in between the two. That's why you see some muscular and some skinny soccer players, but on general, you guys are pretty lean and pretty muscular. So it is very important that you don't start metabolizing your own muscles for a simple reason of injury prevention and obviously performance. So now you know a little bit how your body works. And for a moment, I want to shut up. I don't do that very well, but I want to open it up to some questions. I see some chat thingies there. I'm not good with these asking. I'm a guy.
You were just
so if you guys can shout out what the question is, I'm going to have a couple of answers to those.
Yeah, no, there's some terrific information. Anybody have any questions on anything Axel has spoken about or just anything at all? If you don't want to unmute yourself and ask it, feel free to type it in the chat.
That's good. I like it. It's that means I explained it digestible enough, right? Talking.
Oh, someone just asked, what's the perfect game day morning meal?
All right, for that one, check in next Tuesday, 7:30. I will absolutely nail it down to the T, because what I want from you now, I got to give you all a little bit of homework, right? So I want you all to really look at this a little bit. Guys, I'm working, my current job is I own 2 fitness centers, okay? I consult with lots of people who are on weight loss and disease management. And I told you earlier, I work also with very serious athletes of many, many sports, okay? I can tell you, the first thing I do is nutritional consulting. It is absolutely mind-blowing how much potential athletes leave on the table by eating wrong. I can't emphasize that enough. When I ask them, how much do you drink? If I would ask you, all of you who are looking right there, how much water did you drink today? Most people don't have the answer. It's a guess at best. When I ask them, do you have a general idea of what your macronutrients look like? How many carbs, how many protein, how much fat? They will guess, right? When I ask them, what is the portion size looking? I don't know. I eat bigger dinners than breakfast, and it's just all general, right? Think about if you would train like that as a soccer player. If your coach would tell you, you know what's just generally take that ball towards the opponent's goal, and just generally when you're there, see if you can shoot a goal. But that would not be a skillful player. All right, we're very specific in regards of passing and off the ball movement, and you need to be specific with nutrition because you guys are all year-round soccer players. You have a huge ability to separate yourself from the competition by eating clean. So want to quickly follow up with that. I haven't talked about, let's see right here, my notes, talked about the kindling, stuff like that. So what your goal will be in regards of protein is, I get this question all the time, supplements. Yes, protein supplements are the only supplement I really recommend here and there because not everybody is a heavy meat eater and it's difficult to get enough protein from plant sources. So whey protein shakes in health food stores, you can good sources right there. You can consult with them there. There's a good one here in Niantic where I live called Whole Foods or something. They're very good. So anyway, a whey protein shake can supplement protein very well. And protein is needed because the protein is basically in your body stored in form of tissue. So your bones, your muscles, and your organs are all made of protein. So if you do not have enough protein, you not develop much. And you guys are all adolescents, you're still growing. And it segues me into a question I was asked yesterday about the female triad problem on eating, which is like that girls of high school age often have an under-eating kind of symptom in order to avoid possibly gaining unnecessary weight. And it's not really often diagnosed as an eating disorder yet, but it often leads to them struggling with their A, menstruation, and B, with their bone density. And it's medically a problem, right? So when I went to medical school, that was actually when we had the, I read it up yesterday in my old notes. That was actually in the female athlete, the high school athlete in Germany, where I'm from, that was actually 5% of the athletes suffered of some form, milder or more severe, of that under eating habit of girls in high school age. So listen, obviously there's so much to be talked about. And those of you who find themselves in that situation, it is highly recommended to go to a registered dietitian here in the state. They handle these kind of things. It's a medical profession, and that is not my specialty. But I can tell you this, the same principles, you will take gratification out of eating a lot. And I give you an example. Michael Phelps. Everybody knows about Michael Phelps, right? He won, what, 10 or 9 Olympic medals in the London Olympic Games, right? So nobody would consider him fat or obese, right? During the Olympic Games, he ate, now listen to this, a whopping 17,000 calories a day during the entire, okay? So it doesn't, just because you avoid calories does not mean you get lean or athletic. What you want to train your body to do is take that battery when you eat quality food, that your body is immediately able to store it in the proper sources. And then here, more importantly, through regular physical activities such as soccer training, be able to release it quickly back out for athletic performance. That is actually the term metabolism. Metabolic activity means turning over energy in and out and in and out and in and out. And that equilibrium of energy equal coming in and going out is what an athlete wants to have. And that's what I encourage you to do, you guys. So when you find yourself starving or you find yourself struggling because you're hungry, right? That is when you undereat. When you find yourself sluggish and, you know, like almost bloated and stuff like that, and you're overeating, you need to find that rhythm. People ask me all the time, how many calories should I eat? And that is not easy because you guys are all different in body weight and body height. And there's 6-7 formulas who try to equate that. I have an Apple Watch and it tells me that. They take one of those formulas. Other, you know, devices take other formulas, or apps, nutritional apps tell you that. But it's a guess. So you need to learn a little bit about yourself. Generally have at least 3 meals a day and possibly a pre-game or a pre-practice snack. That you kind of, again, come to that kindling, right, in your stomach, ready to fire up the large carbs. And you should have, you know, your body weight times 10 in pounds is generally rule of thumb, should not eat calories below that level, right? So I'm 250 pounds. I'm ashamed to say that. So I should not eat under 2,500 calories, or I'm shutting my metabolism down. And when I run my 3Ks out on Brightbrook, I'm going to stink at it. All right, so it's basically as simple as that. But however, I tell you, this is a little bit more complicated than taking that formula. So I want you to play with that a little bit, okay? So I want to quickly dig into a couple of good sources of vegetables. Okay, guys, everything which is a vegetable, you know, dig into it. All right, explore. Don't be I only eat broccoli type person. All right, explore other thing. A good trick to make vegetables very likable is to often roast them and slightly salt them. It tastes delicious. It's like a little popcorn taste to it. It's crunchy and super high fibers. I mean, athletes eat vegetables, love the veggies, love the lean protein, rehydrate frequently. All right, for the average teenage athlete, we like to have 8 to 12 glasses of water a day in order to at least get minimum requirement of refueling. And most importantly, come back next Tuesday and learn what to eat before a game, what to eat before a tournament, what to eat on the day of the game. And now listen to this, what you eat during the game and what you eat after the game. Those are all important things. Now, I can tell you, I've got 3 Division I athletes right now. They're extremely successful in their freshman year as starters, okay? And I tell you what, they leave that nothing. They have a meal plan which lays these patterns out to the minute. Okay, they actually have, that's what I did as an endurance athlete, as a triathlete. We lay out how much, what, when we eat. And so you want to have a plan. If you go into a tournament without a plan, if you find yourself after game one and turn into your mom and dad and say, where are we going? And they look on their phone and they say, oh, there is a Subway nearby. Subway has some healthy options, but not many. Okay. And so whoops, all of a sudden that's not a plan. Okay. So plan it, write it down. And next week at 7:30, it's a very short advice. It's very simple. And it takes about 15 minutes and open up to questions. You will get all the tools you need to eat like a pro. And then you bring yourself from here to there as an athlete. And that's what I have for today, guys.
That's brilliant stuff, Axel. I really appreciate it. And really in depth, really good. There was one question that was asked when you were talking.
Absolutely.
And it was about sugar. And it's kind of difficult one to ask because obviously sugar comes from many different things.
Yep.
So what is the amount of sugar we should or should not be eating?
Well, again, sugar, there's like these, you need to define what sugars you mean, right? Sugars are generally in the group of carbohydrates. They are like usually chains of sugars combined, right? And then sometimes there's very simple sugars. The simple sugars are the ones you eat from fruit, and also, unfortunately, from glucose, or like the refined sugar you see often people put in their coffee, or you see in candy, ice cream, bakery products. You need to keep it really low on those. And for example, I advise my athletes to not have more than 2 tablespoons a day of granulated sugar, or that's like 1 or 2 treats in form of cookies, or a tiny little bit of a cake. Right now, don't get bad conscience if you have a family celebration, you eat 2 or 3. But if you have a regular habit of consuming simple sugars, all right, which is probably what the question asked you, what it does, it messes with your hormonal system. There's a hormone called insulin, which takes your sugar, which goes through the digestive system and then into the blood, and it takes it and it stores it. Now, this insulin has one problem. When you have a lot of insulin in your blood, you all of a sudden lose that sugar. You turn low in sugar. That's called hyperglycemic. And that's the #1 reason kids pass out on the soccer field, or actually I see it even in my own gym, and sometimes people come on an empty stomach. And also sugar levels need to not go like up and down like crazy. They need to be nice and regulated. So small amounts of refined sugar or candy. And as I told you earlier, 50% of your meal plates should be full of carbohydrates in form of the pasta and rice and good quality breads and things like that. All right. So that's my advice on that one.
Great question. Great answer.
It is a good question.
Anybody else?
It's a subject where we can have like 3 hours of lecture about.
I absolutely completely agree, man. Being a health teacher as well, I talk about this stuff, and I always use that Michael Phelps reference. I'm like, if you're using the energy and he needs it, I was like, guy used to eat 15,000 calories a day. It's crazy.
So I want to throw out one more thing. There's a lot of apps out there. Now you all have phones. I love my phone. I love my apps. I really do. And I have lots of them. And I bet you guys do too. There is great nutritional apps out there. There's almost no more bad. There's so many motivated nutritionists out there who really try to help you guys with this. They're great tools. They give you visuals, and you log. The biggest problem is to learn to log accurately, right? So when I ask people how many cups of broccoli was it, they say, I think it was just a cup. And when we actually measured, it was like 5. All right. Or, how many ounces of white wine was that? When I asked my adults, and they're like, I think 4 ounces. But in reality, it was 12. That's a big difference. So you need to obviously learn a little bit about portion size and educate yourself a little bit. But these apps, MyFitnessPal, Lose It, those are awesome apps, and they're often free. And they at least raise awareness. Nobody logs forever. Trust me. I worked with this since 1992 as a trainer. Nobody logs since 1992 on these damn apps. People log for 3 months, get a little bit of education and structure, and hopefully they can carry through. And when they fall off the wagon, you go back to it. Falling off the wagon is normally, my athletes train in 4 phases. The season, you eat differently and train differently in the season, then tapering after the season, then the preseason general conditioning, and the preseason sports-specific conditioning. In every one of those phases, you eat differently. And so there's room for a pig out phase in the summer when you're on the boat with your parents and they bring out some not so athletic foods. That's couple of Oreos or whatever, that's okay. There's wiggle room for that. You don't need to be the Holy Spirit in regards of eating habits, right? So there's we are real eaters, and it's okay.
Yeah, it's a great point. There's always room for cheat days, man. But
yep.
as as
and use the apps. Use go on your phones and play a little bit. That's all the information I just said. You will find there. It's really not rocket science.
That's awesome, Axel. Thank you so much. Everybody that is here, don't forget, next week is not the same information. It's building on this week. He'll talk about pregame meals, all that stuff. So hopefully you enjoyed yourselves. I've recorded this. I'll post it for those who weren't here. So hopefully they can join us next week as well, and we'll get more people. But Axel, once again, thank you so much. Everyone else, I'll see you next week. Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great night, Axel.
You too.